let's dive right into section 2. Alright, so a molecule is two or more of the same type of atom that is bonded together. A compound is a molecule that contains two different elements that are bonded together, and the formula of that compound or molecule tells you the number of each kind of atom in the molecule and the number of each atom are there. So the formula C6H12O6 is for glucose, and that means that there are 6 carbon atoms, there are 12 hydrogen atoms, and 6 oxygen atoms in that single molecule. So the subscript here indicates 6 carbon, the 12 here indicates 12 hydrogen, and the 6 here indicates that there are 6 oxygen atoms in this single molecule. Chemical bonding. Bonds that exist between atoms in molecules contain energy. The bonds between those atoms are caused by the interactions between the electrons in those atoms. The process of bond formation is called a chemical reaction. Sometimes a chemical reaction builds those bonds between two atoms, and sometimes it breaks them down. Ionic bonds form between ions. An ion is an atom that has gained or lost an electron. And an ionic bond forms when that electron, that one on the outermost shell, is transferred from one atom to another. And they are attracted to each other because of that positive-negative charge. So sodium chloride, table salt, is the most prevalent example of this. Salts are solid substances that usually separate and exist as individual ions in water. So whenever they are put in water, they break down into their individual ions, and this generally raises the melting point of water. So that's why we use salt on our roads in the wintertime to melt snow and ice. Here we have a Bohr model of a sodium atom and a chlorine atom. This is our valence electron in our sodium. Notice it only has 1, and chlorine has 7. So the sodium atom will give up one of its electrons, this outermost one, because when it gives it away, it's now happy. It has a full valence shell. And chlorine is happy because it now has a full valence shell. And so we get sodium chloride, or table salt. And if we look at it under a microscope, this is actually what the salt looks like. It forms little squares like that. This is what's called a crystal lattice, where the positive sodium is attracted to the negative chlorine, and it forms a nice structure like this. Covalent bonds occur when atoms share electrons. This happens in nonmetals bonding with other nonmetals. Sometimes those electrons are shared equally, shared the same amount between both atoms, and this is what's called a nonpolar covalent bond, meaning that they share them equally. The electron is found directly in the middle of the two atoms. So here we have some examples of covalently bonded molecules that share them equally. So H2 is covalent and they share it equally. Here we have oxygen gas. They actually share multiple electrons. And here we have methane gas. Carbon and hydrogen share those electrons equally. Sometimes those electrons are not shared equally, and they form what's called polar covalent bonds. Water is one of these substances. It does not share its electrons equally. It's like my sister and I sharing anything at all. One of us always has it more than the other one. All right? We hang out all the time. We're best friends, but still, sometimes things stay at my house longer than at her house, so we don't share equally. Electronegativity is the ability of an atom to attract electrons toward itself in a chemical bond. In water, the oxygen atom is more electronegative than the hydrogen atoms, and so those oxygen atoms hold more tightly onto the electron, and they keep it close to it, and they don't like to share. And so it is a polar bond. So we have a region that is slightly negative or partially negative because the electron is hanging out more over here with the oxygen. So the hydrogens are partially positively charged because they don't get to see that electron very often.